Okay, so we're going to change the bearings on here, and we have replacement bearings. And all we've done so far is take off the 4 bolts and take the tire off. And now you're taking the dust cap off, right?
Yes.
And those sometimes are a little bit stuck on, huh? I mean, they can be a little tough to get off.
Not really. Gotta get behind it.
Oh, I see. It's starting to come off now. There we go.
Okay.
All right, and now we have a nut with a pin that holds it on. And let me zoom in a little closer there. So you're getting that pin straightened out and pulled out of there, right?
Yep.
So yeah, you straighten it and then you're knocking it down.
You grab it at the bottom, like pinch it, grab it, and then
You definitely get some grease around when you do this.
Alright, that's out. Now, awesome, it's got that pretty tight. Tighter than it needs to be.
So this large nut on there, sometimes you need to use a little bit of a tool to get that off. Are these ever really rusted and super hard to get off?
Well, I've done it on 60-year-old vehicles where they've been a little tricky to get off at times, but...
How long do you think since this one was last done?
Oh, this not that long ago.
5, 10 years ago or something?
I would say, unless it's not been used, but based on the...
But the bearings in this one, based on the other wheel, they were not in very good shape.
Well, the bearings were bad. There's 2 bearings on each hub, and the bearings on the back side of that one were really bad. And this one here, a washer.
So there's a washer to the outside? Is that right behind that nut?
Yeah, there's a washer behind that. This actually looks pretty clean.
And you want to make sure that's nice and smooth and clean, or you have an issue there.
If there's any burrs or anything on there, it's best to just file them off.
And just make sure it's nice and polished clean.
Yep. Now the front bearing always comes off right away. You want to check the race in the hub, which is the surface that the tapered cone bearing rides on, and that is pretty perfect on this one on the front. So we shall see.
You're looking at that. That's nice and smooth there is what you're looking for.
It's polished and it's smooth. That's
okay.
The surface. And
let's see that here. Just okay, yeah.
It's
nice.
a tapered surface. It's because these are cone bearings, and they ride right inside that. It's called the race. That's machined into the hub, and there's nothing you can do if it's wrecked. It's time for a new hub. Now the back bearing now we are putting in new bearings.
Okay.
But if you are doing it,
you could also be doing this, taking it apart and just repacking the bearings with grease.
Right.
Because they could be, well, the bearings will last pretty long if they're properly greased continuously, right?
Yep.
I mean, they get damaged when they're not greased often enough.
Especially on boat trailers where they go in the water, and then they tend to break. So here's what I do: is just take a block of wood.
And this is because that inside bearing.
The inside bearing has to be knocked out from the front side.
Okay.
And away we go.
And that's it. It knocked out that easy.
It knocked out. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're harder
now,
than that.
If I was going to, and there's a dust seal on the back, and generally, if you're doing new bearings, you know, you have to order the dust seal extra. You won't get it with the bearing, but
okay.
Generally they're in pretty good shape. So I just
unless they get mangled, you
clean
can
off
just
the dust seal. As long as it's in good shape, you can use it.
And that goes in the very back.
Yeah. This bearing on this back side actually doesn't look as bad as the one on the other side. One on the other side was shot. So what we do now is we want to repack the new bearings. Now, if you were going to save the old bearing, repack the old bearing, you need to clean this first. Set it in a pan of kerosene and use a little soft brush, and the grease will all dissolve out of there. and just use kerosene for that. Don't blow them with a compressor. Dry, you'll wreck them in an instant. So, once you've done that, whichever you're doing, a new bearing or an old bearing, once it's clean, I take my brush.
And this is a high temperature wheel grease.
Yeah, and I just brush some on to the bearing. A little more than that.
And this is about the same for all relatively small trailers?
Yeah, all wheel bearings in general. It's the same principle.
Is it different on vehicles?
And then I use my thumb to work. No, it's not really any different on a car. Except today's bearings are often sealed and you can't do this to them. But older cars, you always grease. That was all part of standard maintenance on a vehicle. Anyway, I use my thumb. Yeah, you got to get your hands dirty. Wear gloves if you don't want to get the grease in your hands. But I just keep putting it on here and then using my thumb to roll it, get all the rollers turning and get all the grease worked into them. Just keep going around and around until you feel that you've got this packed. They call it packing a bearing because you're packing the bearing. Packing it full of grease. It's a messy job, but somebody's got to do it. So.
And this takes a total of, I mean, start to finish, if you have the right bearings to replace it.
20 minutes on the side.
15, 20 minutes.
Just keep getting the grease. I got a big mess going here, but I just keep working it with my thumb until I don't see any voids in this bearing. Until it doesn't take too long. Until it gets all covered real well. And then roll it all in there. Then, at that point, take my rag and try and clean everything off that I just smeared goo on. The faces. And particularly the inside of the bearing where it's going to sit on the journal, the wheel axle really. So you want that clean and dry inside. You only want the grease on the bearings themselves, on the bearing surfaces. And then I take a little bit more once I've got that done, and I just wipe another little coating on top of what I've already worked in here. And then I'm ready to go. And then I just put that other coating on here. You can see you have to pack bearings. You have to get the grease into the bearings and these bearing buddies and all this thing where you pump the grease in. All it does is go down the middle like this and sit there and harden up. It doesn't make its way to the bearings. Their bearing buddy is just useless. As far as I am concerned, I'd much rather take the time and pack it and know what's going on with my bearings and rely on pumping it into a hole. Okay, once that's done, whoa, don't throw it on the ground. Once that's done, then go back and make sure your race on here, and keep that in a clean spot. Let's try and keep it clean. Go back and wipe out and inspect this inner race of the hub. Make sure, again, it's not marred up and it's clean and shiny, which it is. So it's all in good shape there and on the race. So at that point, got my bearing all greased up. Drop that right in there. Put my dust cap back on.
So one goes in from each side, basically.
Right. And then I'll take my wood block and just
tap the dust cap back on.
So there's that part of the hub. So at that point, it's dry inside again. Make it double sure that where it goes on the axle, it's going to be nice and dry. And just to keep it clean, I'll kind of stick it over there and get it out of my way for the moment. It can sit there. Those are old bearings. Then I'll take the other new one, do the same thing again. Big dabs of grease all over everything and just work it into those bearings, into those roller bearings. Just keep it going until she's all packed full. Which is like 3 times around or something. I just keep working until I don't see any voids showing up in there. Use my thumb, use everything, just roll it around. Pack it in.
And gloves work pretty well if you use like medical style type of gloves.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get it all over your hands.
Yep, well, since I replaced the wheel bearing on the truck today, the whole hub assembly, I had my hands dirty, so I just said heck with it. Otherwise I might have. Alright, once I'm happy that I've got that all kind of worked in there again, and clean out the center, and clean off the face so it's pretty and it doesn't look sloppy. Dry that center out again, and then once again do my outer coating, do another little outer coating, and leave that sit on there. Just a 1/8 of an inch of grease on the outside, which will add to the fray. So I know you should be able to get 10-15,000 mile travel out of a repack, but once a year isn't a bad deal if you got a camper that you've pulled a lot. Okay.
Or probably once a year on a boat trailer that gets dunked in the water,
yeah,
huh?
If it gets in the water, it's gonna go. Now, okay, I'll just slide this one in here, back over the shafts, and there like that. Keep things clean and neat, and away we go. Put the washer back on. Get the castle nut back on.
That's the large nut we took off at first.
Now, you don't want to use a wrench to put these on. You obviously got to line the castle nut up with the hole in the axle, but you want to get it, you can kind of preload the bearings by giving them just a little snuggie, but you just want to get it right up to the point where there's no slop this way. Keep everything else clean here, and there's no slop this way. You feel that bearing, nothing at all. It's just tight. They will wear a little bit through time, and sometimes just come back and adjust. Right now I'm lined up perfectly with the pinhole, so then I go back and I get a box of cotter pins. And
you usually put a new pin in each time, right?
Yeah, I always use them.
Because what do you get a whole box of pins online or Harbor Freight, and it's $10 for a whole bunch of pins or something?
I don't have any idea what they cost, but yeah. Anyway, I just pick out the good sized pin that will do the job. I could use a little bigger number than this one. That one's a little. See how this one works here. That one there will do it, and you put your pin through.
Okay, it's just a big enough head that it can't pull through, right?
Right. And then
Then on the bottom, you're just bending that over.
Yeah, bend your tab over back in there so that it can't come out. This was a little shorter pin, so I'm going to have to use a screwdriver to pry this. And bring it out, but that's basically it. You just need to...
You could probably grab that bottom of the needle nose pliers if you had one handy too, huh? You just want to get it bent over?
Yeah, just to get it so it can't back out of the hole. It doesn't do that much. And then this front side here, bring this one up front like that, so it's bent two ways. And test her one more time. Feels all really good. Set your dust cap back on. I always use a little wood instead of...
Oh, you don't ding it up?
You don't dig it up and try and put even pressure on it. Pop your dust cap on. That's it, except for the wheel, and
you put the wheel back on, and you let the jack down, and you're done.
That is it. And then you got to clean up your greasy hands, but that is it.
Well, that's pretty simple.
Yep. The biggest thing is to pack those bearings properly, and don't, in my opinion, do not rely on bearing buddies. They're just not a. If you look inside every hub, you'll see all the grease all hardened and filling the void down the center, and you'd have to have absolute ton of grease in there to get into the bearings anyway. You'd have to have it so full, and it never does that. So you might as well just learn to get your hands dirty and do it like this.
All right, perfect. And that was about a 15-minute job. Took us a minute beforehand to pull the wheel and put up the jack, and then we'll just wrap it up here. So it's going to be about a 17-minute total per side, or about a 35-minute project for both sides of a two-wheel trailer.